This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
A longtime Washington political expert, Morton Kondracke from Fox News and Roll Call on this edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you for joining us. Recently, Fox News contributor and Roll Call executive editor Morton Kondracke was in town to speak with the Panhandle Tiger Bay Club. We had an opportunity to sit down with him and get his views on Washington politics, the economy, and education. Morton, you've been around Washington politics for a long time. You've obviously seen a handful of presidents come and go. How's Barack Obama doing so far?
Well, you know, his popularity ratings are falling. He's fallen something like 15 points since February. And, you know, the Democrats all love him, but the Republicans hate him. And the independents are, who, after all, elected him, are beginning to have their doubts. It's largely got to do with the amount of the deficit and the extent of government takeovers of things. People are really nervous about the national debt and stuff like that. And now his health care plan is in some trouble. If he doesn't get a health care plan, and if the economy doesn't improve, I think, by the middle of next year, then I think he's in real bad shape.
How bad do you think the far left wing of the Democratic Party, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Acorns, and folks like that, are, how big of an effect are they having on him right now?
Well, you know, Acorn and Nancy Pelosi are not in the same exact category. I mean, Acorn is really far left. I mean, we're talking Michael Moore territory there. And Nancy Pelosi may have her doubts about capitalism, but and she certainly doesn't believe in unbridled capitalism, but she's basically, you know, her husband got rich and she's wealthy, so she's not going to, you know, give up the capitalist system. So it's different, but nonetheless, she's very liberal and she does believe in big government. And Obama did allow her and Henry Waxman and Harry Reid and Dick Durbin and those people who are definitely liberals to write cap and trade legislation on the environment and energy, and four of the 5 health care plans that are out there. Now, Max Baucus in the Senate Finance Committee, who's more moderate, is trying to work something out that can pass, but the liberals definitely have the run of things, and Obama, I think, yielded too much to them. Now, there's a question: is Obama really a centrist, a moderate, or is he a liberal? It almost doesn't make any difference if he hands the reins over to Nancy Pelosi, because she is a liberal.
Right. Question, the Republicans. Of course, the Democrats are saying, well, you can complain about health care all you want, but the Republicans really aren't coming up with a viable option. What's the problem with the Republican Party right now?
Well, the Republicans have come up with alternatives. Now, most of the alternatives have gotten no press at all, and I got to say that the Republicans don't talk about the positives very much. I mean, they basically talk about what's wrong with Obama, and I think that the Republicans ought to make the case that they are for things, and you know, aren't just the party of no, and they don't. Like, for example, they are in favor of medical malpractice reform. If there were medical malpractice reform, there would be less defensive medicine, therefore costs would go down. They're in favor of letting people buy insurance across state lines. Now, if Obama suddenly were to say, okay, I embrace those solutions, would the mass of Republicans actually vote for his health care plan? I doubt it. But nonetheless, he would sort of dare them to oppose him if he yielded to them. The problem is that the Democrats in Congress basically don't listen to Republicans, certainly not in the House of Representatives. So there's very little Republican input into this, and so the Republicans can say, you know, we were frozen out, therefore we're against it.
Do you think that over the past few years, or maybe even the past 10 years or so, has politics gotten meaner and more personal?
It's gotten a lot nastier. You know, it's gone in waves. Look, there are times in our history when politics has been extremely polarized. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, you know, back then the media was all partisan, and they accused Thomas Jefferson of terrible things, and they accused the Democrats accused Abraham Lincoln of terrible things, and we used to have bombings, anarchist bombings and stuff like that at the turn of the century, and Vietnam was a time of trial, and Watergate and all that. But I think that that things have become very polarized. I mean, there have been periods in our history, in the post-war period, when Democrats and Republicans might have disagreed on the floor of the Congress, but fundamentally they made friends across party lines and could talk and could negotiate, and you know, most of the advances in our time have been bipartisan advances. And it seems to me that the problems that we've got, the long-term deficit problem, education problem, immigration, energy, all that stuff have got to be solved on a bipartisan basis. I mean, George Bush tried to get Social Security reform, and the Democrats killed that. Obama is trying to get health care reform, and the Republicans and the conservative movement, it looks like, could kill that. And so we don't get anything done, you know. And meanwhile, the rest of the world, you know, our national debt is just soaring, and we can't pay our bills, and we may have to inflate our currency. And if we do, you know, the long-term future of the United States versus China or India is not very bright.
Speaking, and I want to shift back just for a second, the polarization, is some of that being exacerbated by the media? I mean,
yeah,
it seems like
of
the
course.
media, more so than it used to be, is far left or far right. Am I on something?
Well, fewer and fewer people are reading newspapers. Fewer and fewer people are watching national television programs, network shows. And most people are increasingly getting their information off the internet or cable news. And MSNBC and Fox News serve, the MSNBC has gone way left. Fox News basically serves the conservative side of the electorate. CNN is sort of somewhere in the middle, but it basically leans a little bit left. And meanwhile, the internet is dominated by, I think, liberals, more or less, and talk radio is right wing. So, you know, everybody is sort of going to their corners is the problem, and they get their information from their favorite news source, and their favorite news source is not only giving them information, but pumping them full of ideology. And so, you know, you get Code Pink on the left side screaming about how Bush is a killer and a torturer and all that, and you get the Tea Party people saying that Obama is a communist, and, you know, putting up pictures saying that Obama's Hitler and stuff like that, and it's everybody's going in those directions.
How do you stop that kind of stuff, or do you?
I do not know. Now, Obama understood the problem, and he came to office saying that he was going to heal America, that he was going to, you know, unite red America and blue America into the United States of America. And he said that over and over and over again. And I think that's why moderates and independents voted for him. Not only that, but also because the Republicans seem to be doing such a lousy job. But he did promise that he was going to try to heal this rift. So they started out, Obama did, with sort of having social tea parties, wrong kind of tea parties, cocktail parties with Republicans from Congress over the stimulus package. The Republicans, he didn't adopt any Republican ideas, but he sort of schmoozed with them. And then when only 3 Republicans voted for his stimulus package, I think Rahm Emanuel, who's a famous potty mouth, said, you know, those blankety blank Republicans, you can't trust them. So let's blankety blank them, you know. And Obama hasn't been reaching out ever since. And, you know, I think that that's what he's got to do. He's got to try to unite the country, and at the moment he's not.
Is there a void of leadership in Washington right now? I mean, not so much from Obama's standpoint, but throughout Congress. Are we sending good people up there, I guess?
Yeah, you know, I don't. You know, Ross Perot used to say that the politicians in Washington are good people trapped in a bad system. You know, there are a lot of people who are good people there in Washington. I think, look, it is Obama's job to lead. Ronald Reagan proved that the country can be led, and united and made proud and all of that. And it doesn't have to be, people don't have to be at each other's throats. So it's basically his job. That's what he's the CEO of the country in effect. I think that the situation has become so polarized that the Democrats in Congress only want to lead in a left direction. I don't think they want to have anything to do with Republicans. They don't trust Republicans. They think Republicans are all obstructionists, and so they want to roll them. And you know, they're not getting rolled.
Do you see in the next few years a strong leader emerging in the Republican Party? I mean, you know, we're such, with the 24-hour news cycle, we're already thinking about the next election. You know, you think of the Tim Palentis and people like that. Anybody in your eyes that?
Well, you know, the person who I know, of all of them, the person that I know the best is Mitch Daniels, the governor of Indiana, who has done a phenomenal job there of getting the state back on a financial footing. He's an imaginative conservative who wants to improve education, which is a huge problem. He wants to make the state attractive to business. So you know, he's privatized some things. He's not very charismatic. And he's pretty, you know, he's got a kind of a dry wit. Now, whether he's right-wing enough to satisfy the base of the Republican Party, I don't know. You know, he may be too nice to so whether he's charismatic and exciting enough, I don't know. You know, I'm a little disappointed in Mitt Romney. I think Mitt Romney has the IQ and the business background to be a really good leader. The problem is that he just follows the herd all the time. I mean, I don't see him saying anything distinctive. And during the campaign, he tried to make himself into Tom Tancredo, be anti-immigration, and he tried to be as right-wing as he possibly could be. He was running away from who he was himself, and I don't see him really finding himself. Now, he's the next guy in line. You know, the Republican Party always nominates the next guy in line. Even John McCain was the next guy in line, and Mitt Romney, unless it's Mike Huckabee, you know, is the next guy in line, so he's got a leg up.
How is the whole geopolitical scenario going to develop? I mean, right now as we tape this program, you know, Iran being pretty blatant of what they're doing as far as their nuclear activity is concerned. Clearly Afghanistan's still an issue, clearly Iraq an issue. How does he deal with it?
Well, you know, I think he should have, I think that what Obama should have done is to have concentrated on the economy, reform of financial services, and the geopolitical crises, and left, and maybe done healthcare, but not the environment too. You know, I think he overloaded the circuits. But anyway, back to your question. Look, these are grave, grave problems, and it's up in the air whether whether this country is going to come out well in them. I frankly don't understand what Obama is up to with Afghanistan. He said in March, this is a vital war, we've got to win it. If we don't win it, Al-Qaeda will come back and control, have a safe haven again in Afghanistan. We can't allow that to happen. Terrorism is a real threat, so we're gonna have a surge in effect. All of a sudden, he's having doubts about that. Now, it's complicated by the fact that the Afghans had a corrupt election, but that's no reason to give up the game. Now, it's not clear that he is giving up the game. I'd like to think that what he's doing is doing his Abraham Lincoln thing now. I mean, what Abraham Lincoln did was to let his generals sort of run the Civil War until he discovered that they couldn't, and then he got into that, learned military strategy, and began to tell his generals how he wanted to fight the war. Now, it may be that Obama has decided, wait a minute, before I get into this, commit to Afghanistan, let's hold back and let's see if there's a reasonable strategy here. If that's the case, and he turns around and says, okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do counterinsurgency. I'm going to give McChrystal the troops he needs, you know, and this is how we're going to win the war, then fine. If he pulls out, it's, you know, or backs off or something like that, it's going to look like he did it for political reasons. And you know, I could see McChrystal quitting, and then he's got a real mess. And then if we lose Afghanistan on Obama's watch, and Al-Qaeda comes back and has a safe haven, and you know, we have videos of Osama bin Laden smiling with Mullah Omar, then I just think we're in terrible trouble. And then we've got Iran. You know, Iran is clearly now, without anybody's question, if anybody had any question, working on nuclear weapons and the missiles to deliver them. And we've got to stop them. I mean, if we don't stop them, the Israelis are going to try to stop them. And the Israelis really can't stop them because they don't have the military, they don't have enough airplanes to hit all the targets that they would have to hit in order to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. We could do it, but I don't think Obama has the stomach to go to war with Iran.
Let me shift back to the economy for a moment. You mentioned re-regulating the financial services industry. Are we going to run the risk of getting too much regulation involved in business? I think about, you know, they're talking about, you know, CEOs making too much money and things of that nature. I would think that's the responsibility of the shareholders, sure, as opposed to the government. Are we overreacting as a government at this point, and are we running the risk of getting too involved in corporate America and therefore causing even more of a problem on our economy?
Well, there's that danger, but so far nothing has happened. I mean, there isn't any financial regulation, and you know, you read in the newspapers, and the banks are inventing now yet more obscure kind of financial instruments. They're slicing and dicing insurance policies now, where they used to do it with subprime mortgages. So, I mean, it seems to me that derivatives have got to be regulated, at least to the extent that people know what's in them. And the banks that issue them ought to have some skin in the game, that they ought to have to be required to hold on to some of them so that they, you know, they can't just sell them off and distribute the risk and then, you know, evade any responsibility for the instruments that they've created. And there ought to be transparency. You know, there ought to be, people ought to know what the CEO salaries are. You probably ought to have independent directors who serve on the compensation committees, and the stockholders ought to know clearly what and have some ability to take a vote at least on what the compensation packages look like. I mean, now the danger is, yeah, that people that we overdo it and overregulate. But so far we haven't done that. You know, now I mean, there was a suggestion that the government was somehow going to instruct financial institutions on how much to pay their executives according to whether they were creating value. Now, how some bureaucrat is going to decide whether, you know, where's the line between creating value and what's too much risk and how much people should get paid, you know, I think that's the going overboard. But there's got to be some more regulation than there's been.
How much of this, the Democrats and the folks who are complaining about what's going on in the economy want to blame everything on George Bush? How much of it, in your opinion, was a Bush problem?
Well, some, you know, I mean, I think the SEC totally fell down on his job under Bush. I mean, it's an independent agency, but Chris Cox, you know, didn't enforce the uptick rule, didn't stop naked short selling. I mean, you know about this kind of stuff even better than I do. And I think that the SEC, they didn't investigate Bernie Madoff. You know, something was wrong at the SEC. It was a free market system, the whole attitude. Now, I got to say, it wasn't just George Bush. When Brooksley Born, who was the head of the Commodity Future Trading Corporation back in the late Clinton administration, tried to argue that derivatives ought to be regulated, Larry Summers didn't want to do it. You know, the Treasury Secretary under Clinton, Bob Rubin, his predecessor as Treasury Secretary, didn't want to do it. The head of the SEC under Clinton didn't want to do it. So it was a Clinton and a Bush problem. But Bush certainly did not, and he did try to regulate the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and the Democrats defeated that. So it's a bipartisan problem, the financial meltdown. But it happened on Bush's watch.
You not only have a vast experience in broadcast and electronic journalism, but also in print journalism. Newspapers and magazines undergoing some real challenges right now. Where does this go?
Well, there was a really good article in the Wall Street Journal today by Peter Kahn, who used to be the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. And he said it is just crazy for newspapers to have given away, they sell a newspaper on the street, you have to pay for it, right? But the same content that they spent a lot of money gathering, they give away for free on the internet. And it absolutely makes no sense. I mean, the people who can get it on the internet, increasingly kids never read a real newspaper anymore, they go on the internet. If they can get everything for free, why would anybody buy a newspaper? So, I mean, the answer, it seems to me, at least part of the answer is to sell the content that's on the internet. And now whether, I mean, all the newspapers would have to sort of do it together, and they couldn't agree to do it together because that would be a violation of antitrust. But that is certainly part of the answer, is to at least get some return on the investment that you make in news gathering. And the problem is if we go on the way that we're going, you're not going to have enough money to send people out to actually gather the news, and everybody's going to be depending on blogs or on radio talk or something like that, and you're not going to be able to trust that you've got professionals gathering the information that you're reading, and so everybody's going to be in dispute about the facts.
You wrote a book, Saving Millie. Mm-hmm. Tell us about it.
Well, Saving Millie is the story of my late wife's 17-year battle with Parkinson's disease. It came out in 2001, and then a movie was made about it in 2005, which gets rerun every once in a while. People call me up and say, hey, your movie was on last night, and I haven't seen it in a long time. But Millie was a dynamo, and she, there was practically nothing she couldn't do until she was stricken with Parkinson's in 1986, and it changed both of our lives. She became depressed, and she actually didn't have classic Parkinson's. She had something called multisystem atrophy, which is what it sounds like. And normally people can live with Parkinson's. It's a disabling disease, and certainly they don't improve and they deteriorate. But she deteriorated faster than people would normally. But I mean, the consequence of her it just transformed our lives, and I became an activist in trying to raise money for Parkinson's research, and I'm still doing it. I'm on the board of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and by the way, Michael J. Fox is as wonderful a human being in real life as everybody thinks he is. He really is a fantastic guy, and has raised 100 million, 200 million, something like that for Parkinson's research, and has sort of led the government in research by being willing to invest in frontier research, advance the frontier in discovery of Parkinson's. And the Parkinson's Action Network is my other organization, which is works to unite the Parkinson's community in advocacy. So I'm still involved in all that. And Millie died in 2004, and now I'm happily remarried in 2006. My wife is, as a matter of fact, the president of Colin Powell's America's Promise Alliance. So now I've gotten into the business of trying to improve the lot of kids, poor kids in America. And so I'm on the board of a Communities and Schools for the Nation's Capital, which is a kind of a ancillary organization of America's Promise.
Yeah, Communities and Schools, which is actually, I'm on the board here in the
Oh,
Northwest Florida chapter,
great,
so
good.
we'll throw that in.
Yeah.
Which brings me to another question. How vital is it for us, and I say us, the folks who are out in corporate America or in journalism or military or whatever, to get down and get involved with these underprivileged children who don't maybe have the same opportunities you and I have had over the years?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is, look, of all the problems facing America, one of the biggest ones is education. both at the high end and at the low end. 50% of the kids of color in the United States do not graduate from high school. A third of all kids, white, black, or anything else, who enter high school do not graduate in 4 years. A third nationwide. And the kids who do graduate, only a third of them are proficient in math, science, and reading. A third. And we're 37th in math and science in the world on international tests. Now, people think, average people think that their school is great, but education in general is terrible. The fact is their schools aren't great. And we've got a huge job to do to improve American education. And this is one thing that the Obama administration seems to be getting right and may be able to do something on a bipartisan basis. Arne Duncan, who used to be the superintendent of schools in Chicago, is a real school reformer, and I think Obama is too. And what you need is you need to pay teachers more money so you can get better people into the profession, the very best kids. And then they've got to be handled like professionals. If a teacher is falling down on the job and is given a chance to do a better job and doesn't do it, they ought to be fired based on, and they ought to be rewarded on the basis of merit. I mean, that's the way it operates in banking and journalism and everywhere else. You get paid according to how good you are. That's not the way it is in teaching. You get paid according to how long you've served in the schools, and the unions hate the idea of merit pay, but we've got to have merit pay. So, if we're going to ever compete against the Chinese and the Indians, we're going to have to ramp it up. And, this is the one place where I think you could get a bipartisan agreement in Washington. And if we had a bipartisan move on education, it wouldn't solve all of our problems, but it would be something good, very good.
You've been so kind to spend a great deal of time with us, and we've talked a lot about the negative things going on in Washington. As we close this interview out, give me 2 or 3 good things
well, education really is one of them. I mean, I really do think that there's an awareness, and I got to say that America's Promise, Colin Powell and my wife and Alma Powell, really have triggered an awareness nationally about the dropout crisis. And there's summits in all the states and all the biggest cities, and there's a real drive on. There's 2,000 schools who produce something like 2/3 of the dropouts. And if we could attack and get corporate America and the cities to surround those schools with these resources they need to keep those kids in school, we'd be going a long way. And that's something that's good that's going on.
Special thanks to the Panhandle Tiger Bay Club for helping arrange the interview with Morton Kondracke. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you for watching. Take good care of yourself, and we'll see you on the next Conversations.